The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the show. I've got a ton of stuff to tell you about, so I'm going to get right into it. Remember the comment Mitt Romney was caught on tape making about the 47% of the country he doesn't care about, the people that are victims, that are dependent on the government, on welfare. They believe the government needs to provide all sorts of things for them. This is just absolutely shameful. It turns out Mitt Romney's own dad was one of those people. We have video from BuzzFeed where Mitt Romney's mom, and this is just incredible, says straight up, George Romney was on welfare at one point. He was on welfare. Isn't this absolutely despicable, Lewis? Mitt Romney basically saying he wouldn't even care about his own father because his own father is one of those so-called victims who thinks the government should provide for him.
All right. Well, let's listen to it.
Let's take a look.
You mentioned the people. There are those who say that since he's a man of considerable means, he really doesn't care about people.
You know, we've only owned our home for the last 4 years. He was a refugee from Mexico. He was on relief, welfare relief, for the first years of his life. But this great country gave him opportunities.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The country gave him the opportunity that he needed to get going on his own by having a few years of welfare. Mitt Romney doesn't care about those 47%, which would include his own dad. Shameful.
Harsh.
Isn't it?
It's pretty harsh.
Natan, I mean, this is embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe Mitt Romney's own father wouldn't vote for him just based on his own experience.
Maybe that's what he's saying. And then people also we're live on YouTube, on the YouTube live stream. People also saying, he's really saying, Boomer is saying that what he's really saying is his own father wouldn't vote for him. It's incredible stuff, Lewis.
Pretty unbelievable. He just keeps getting caught up in his own gaffes.
Yeah, and now here's another strange thing. Paul Ryan has been basically gone since the Republican National Convention. He's almost disappeared, except to come out on TV and say that Mitt Romney's 47% comments were obviously inarticulate, but the point does still stand. Here's Paul Ryan.
Well, Congressman Ryan, thanks for joining us. I'd like to get your reaction to the video that was leaked from this fundraiser back in May. Now, on this recording, Governor Romney says that 47% of Americans will vote for President Obama because they are dependent on the government. This has sparked a lot of reaction, obviously. But what did he really mean by that?
Yeah, he was obviously inarticulate in making this point. And the point we're trying to make here is, under the Obama economy, government dependency is up and economic stagnation is up. And what we're trying to achieve is getting people off of government dependency and back to a job that pays well, that gets them on the path to prosperity.
Yeah, that's all that he meant. I mean, the guy that hired me to be his running mate is obviously inarticulate, Lewis. Is that the type of thing you want to be out there saying?
It was just inarticulate at talking about this particular point.
You know, and the funny thing is, not only is it kind of weird for the running mate to be going out and saying that the guy who picked him is obviously inarticulate, he's also flat wrong. I think Mitt Romney was super articulate in what he said. He got his message across loud and clear. He was calm. He spoke clearly.
It was articulate. It was just not factually accurate.
He was so articulate that it shocked voters. The only problem was that he was actually telling the truth about something he believed, and it was incredibly offensive. Articulate wasn't the issue.
Right, right. It was well stated and clear, concise, and to the point. It was very well done. Probably the best public speaking I've ever seen Mitt Romney do.
And it was
technically public speaking.
He had absolutely no idea that it was public. That's
right,
the funny thing.
Right. That's why it was so well done.
The rats are starting to jump the ship. Tim Pawlenty is now stepping down as national co-chair of Mitt Romney's presidential campaign. The official reason is he's leaving to be a lobbyist in the banking industry, and he says his new position doesn't allow him to participate in partisan events. Number one, why do I have the feeling that his new position as a banking lobbyist is probably in and of itself pretty partisan? That's question number one that I have. But number two, we're 47 days from the election or something like that. Do you really think that Tim Pawlenty couldn't say, it's important that I not be seen publicly as leaving the Romney campaign? Would you be willing to hold this job for me for 48 more days and then I'll join you? I mean, this explanation that, listen, it's just, he just has to take this job, he can't be involved, I don't buy it at all.
No, it's never what it seems when something like this happens.
Absolutely not. Natan, are you also thinking that this, combined with a couple of other Republican candidates for Senate leaving basically not standing behind Romney anymore, is this a sign of what's to come? Is he going to be abandoned?
I don't know. I mean, I think that, like we already talked about, Obama has a huge advantage in the race. What I'm thinking is if Romney loses, and especially if he loses big, that party is going to go through a substantial change in the next few years, and this is probably just an example of that, discontent with the party's mainstream.
We can only hope that the Republican Party undergoes significant change. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, we speculate about that a lot, and we think it will happen over the course of many, many years as the older religious group of people kind of phase out.
Right.
And the younger, non-religious kids eventually become politicians, so we'll see.
Hey, I know that Islam is a religion of violence and Christianity is a religion of peace. Rick Perry is now telling Christian soldiers to stand their ground against President Obama. Who's a Christian soldier? I don't know. Is stand your ground a reference to the gun laws of Florida? I don't know. But this was during a conference call with evangelicals on Tuesday. Republican Texas Governor Rick Perry called on Christian warriors and Christian soldiers to stand their ground against Obama, who he says is trying to, quote, remove any trace of religion from American life, a message inspired by Satan himself. This was a conference call with pastors, evangelicals. Also on the call were Michelle Bachmann and Rick Santorum. Interesting. Here's some audio of what Rick Perry had to say. Let's take a listen to this.
Warfare that's going on, and it still continues today, and in fact, it might be growing stronger as President Obama and his cronies in Washington continue their efforts to remove any trace of religion from American life. And it falls on us. I mean, we truly are, Christian warriors, Christian soldiers, and it's for us as Americans to stand our ground and to firmly send the message to Washington that our nation is about more than just some secular laws.
That's the thing. It's kind of not. It's kind of actually not about religious stuff. It is about secular laws. It is about separation of church and state. How does a governor not even understand that at this point?
If only he knew that complete removal of religion from the United States would be the best thing that ever happened to the country.
It's funny. Warriors who must stand our ground, Christian warriors. And it's the Republicans accusing the Muslims of engaging in a religious war. Very strange. A lot of projection going on.
Not the right word. There's got to be a better way to phrase that.
It's hard to imagine a Texas governor more vile than George W. Bush, but I think Perry has achieved that.
Oh, man. Bush has nothing on Perry.
The actual phrase Christian soldier or soldier of God should be a phrase that to any true Christian, like not a self-proclaimed true Christian, but an actual true Christian, would be a despicable phrase to hear. A Christian soldier, a soldier of God, that's not Christianity, Natan, but it's been taken over by these types of right-wingers.
Yeah, what is this, the Crusades?
Yeah, you wonder 100 years ago, 200 years ago, if someone of this intellectual stature could have really become the governor of a huge state. I'm beginning to be a little concerned about that part of the country.
No question about it. And you know what? If something does happen to President Obama now, there's going to be nowhere to hide for these guys that have been caught, banging, hitting the chains and the whole thing now for years. There's going to be nowhere to go.
They'll probably pat themselves on the back.
Wow, that's a scary thought. Speaking of anti-gay people in the limelight, Paris Hilton, who we don't really talk about much on this show, I just find the clip to be interesting, was recorded not by Mitt Romney. You would think at this point it's Mitt Romney in the cab recording Paris Hilton to desperately try to get the attention off of himself, by a cab driver saying that gay men are disgusting and most of them probably have AIDS. This is when she was apparently talking to, it seems to be a gay friend of hers. It's not totally clear, but she seems to generally just be very, very grossed out by homosexuality. Here's Paris Hilton. The video has been edited by Lewis to make it safe.
The audio has been, we don't have the video.
The audio, rather.
Yeah.
Let's take a listen.
It's like that. Like,
spot the two.
Say I log into Grindr, someone that's on Grindr can be in my building. It tells you all the locations where they are, and you can yo, do you want to and he might be on like the 6th floor, and you live on the 4th. It's fucked up.
Gay guys are the horniest people in the world.
Gay guys are too much.
They're disgusting.
It's like, listen, my soul's for me.
Dude, most of them probably
So
have AIDS. I would be so scared if I was a gay guy. You'll like die of AIDS.
No, thank you.
What is this kid?
Yes.
80-year-old.
Okay, So Paris Hilton, they're making some very eloquent points about the plight of homosexuality and the fight for gay rights. This is really weird stuff. You know, I'm not sure what the most shocking part of the story is, that Paris Hilton said gays are disgusting and most of them have AIDS, or that she was riding in a cab. I'm not sure what I'm more shocked by.
That is kind of strange. You'd think it would be a stretch limo of some sort.
Some people are saying this isn't homophobia on her part. This is just because she's talking to a gay friend, allegedly, and we know that if you're in Hollywood, you're okay with gay people.
I don't think she's talking to a gay friend of hers, because the guy says, my you-know-what is for me. My blank hole is for me.
Well, maybe he's saying that when he engages in...
He's a top?
You know, I don't know how much we really want to get into this.
Okay.
But needless to say, it's interesting to me how you see someone like Paris Hilton, and she basically has disappeared from the limelight. I guess she's on some reality show now that no one watches. I have no idea, honestly. But then you get brought back in with homophobic stuff. This is becoming, interestingly enough, tantamount to all of a sudden being an incredible racist, right? I mean, I think it's the right direction, where even people who are kind of out of the limelight, instead of getting back in for having some new perfume, she's back in the spotlight because of making some kind of incredibly prejudiced comment. Is that progress? I don't know.
I don't even know what to think about it. I don't think about it. I mean, this is, if you're shocked, you've been living under a rock for 10 years.
How can Paris Hilton be so into fashion and not like gay guys? That's really odd.
Paradox.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Very weird. Okay, Ann Romney, last thing here. Ann Romney now getting in on the gaffe. Mitt Romney was getting all the gaffe attention, so Ann Romney said, what the hell, let me say something incredibly stupid and insensitive that will further reinforce the exact narrative which is hurting us and we're trying to dissuade people from thinking. In an interview, she said, Mitt obviously doesn't need the president's job for the money. We don't need the cash. I love this. This is just incredible. It's going to take me a second to pull this up. Is this the wrong direction for her to be going, Natan? Is this kind of, would this not be a big deal if this wasn't already the narrative, or is this kind of a dumb thing to say no matter what?
Well, I mean, I would argue that if he were doing it for the money, it would be better than the real reason why he's doing it, which is purely because he's power hungry. I would say that it's probably better for the country that he'd be interested in it for the money, because he's more likely to do a good job as opposed to doing things just to put his, stamp his fist down.
That's an interesting point. It might actually be good if the incoming president found the $440,000 a year or whatever salary it is to be a lot of money. Wouldn't that be a good thing, Lewis? Because it means they're not already going in completely rich.
Either way, there's no way to turn this around and to make it something positive.
You don't think so?
No.
All right. Well, we're going to get to the video here in a second. This is Ann Romney, of course, talking about Mitt and how, listen, guys, he just doesn't really need the money. Let's take a look at this, Lewis. Let's see here. Okay, it is ready.
From the things that I know that I care about, I want to know what motivates the person I would be voting for. And I would say what motivates Mitt is that he cares. That this is a guy that is doesn't obviously need to do this for a job. I mean, he honestly believes he can help many Americans by...
We know, Ann. We know Mitt doesn't need the few $100,000 a year in salary, because why do we know that? Because he said, you know, I got a little bit of speaker's fees on the side that were about $400,000 last year or the year before. So listen, Ann, we know he doesn't need the money, but please keep talking. You're helping your husband lose even faster. I love this.
Nobody becomes president for the money. Nobody.
Okay. Is that true? I mean, thinking about that.
I think that is true.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody has become president for the money. Certainly, it could happen, but we've never had a non-rich president.
That's true. Well, it's good that Ann's clarifying that her husband also wouldn't be president for the money.
Right. Because he could easily just go back to Bain Capital and make $30 million a year.
There you go. Why? He doesn't even have to go back. He made $20 million last year.
That's true. He could just sell off some stock.
A little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Now he can do it online. Doesn't even have to call his broker.
If he knows how to use his touchdown keypad.
Right. On today's bonus show, Chinese cyber attacks continue, psychopathic traits linked to presidential success, do women speak less when outnumbered by men? Lewis hosts and produces the bonus show. Go to davidpakman.com/membership to sign up. Stay tuned. Back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. It's Thursday and time for Worldview with Dennis Campbell. Dennis is editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine. Dennis, let's talk about what are Europeans thinking about the potential of a Mitt Romney presidency. Number one, do they think it's likely he would win? And number two, what will the effect be on the perception of the United States, which has increased as a positive thing under President Obama, if Mitt Romney were to be elected?
It's interesting to take a look at that issue because The Guardian, about a week ago, through their subsidiary and relationship with YouGov at the University of Cambridge, did an extensive survey, not just of Europe, but across the Middle East and Africa. They interviewed something like 12,700 people on this issue of Mitt Romney and his favorability or unfavorability. One of the things they found was that here in the UK, there was a very, very high level of dislike towards Mitt Romney, largely based on the fairly recent, at that point in time, trip with all the gaffes around the Olympics, the fact that he insulted people. They could only find 1 out of every 20 people that felt he would be an asset to the United States. So that meant 19 out of 20 totally disagreed with the choice of him as a potential president. They viewed him very unfavorably. In fact, only 3% said they would make them feel more favorably. And that sentiment was mirrored both in Germany and France. 4% and 5% would make them feel more favorable as well towards the U.S. It's a really, really mixed bag, though, once you get outside, because of the relative unknown who Mitt Romney is at this point. People know a little bit about him from the gaffes, but when you get into the Middle East, he's a little bit less known. Surprisingly, his unfavorables are not as high as they are in the earlier poll here in the United Kingdom and across the rest of Europe. There's also a lot of concern about the job that President Obama has done, quite frankly. A number of Europeans were asked about how well he did on the whole issue of Guantanamo Bay. The drone attacks are having a huge influence on the way people in the Middle East feel about the U.S. administration. So it's not a complete bed of roses for the president either, but their impression of Mitt Romney is one of just absolute horror show.
All right, now American conservatives who watch our show are certainly going to say, we don't care what Europe thinks about our president or about our country. We want the guy that we think will be best here. So putting aside for a second all the reasons why Mitt Romney would not be good for the country, putting that aside for a second, what can we say specifically to those American conservatives who say, we just don't see how Europe's opinion of us makes any difference at all?
Well, I really think the biggest issue is going to be, and this came up in the course of the poll as well, and there's also been a separate poll done in Berlin, that the advisors to Mitt Romney, the roughly 30 advisors that he has on the issue of foreign policy, the vast majority of those, from Dan Senior to John Bolton, are members of the neocon faction that got the U.S. into the wars in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So Europe is painfully aware of what those 8 years of the Bush administration were, particularly the period after September 11th. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of change other than the fact that people really do not like the neocons that he's aligned himself with and the very sharp pro-Israeli rhetoric. That's showing up in all of the polling that we're seeing here, and that's not helping him at all.
Do you think that, I heard something funny from someone, which is all these gaffes that we're talking about with Mitt Romney, particularly during that trip to Europe and Israel, and also here in the U.S., people saying they're not really gaffes. He's just saying what he believes and people don't like it. I'm wondering if maybe we have a semantic problem, where maybe I've been calling them gaffes also, but maybe they're not really gaffes. They're just horrifying truths. I don't know. Should we be changing our language here?
Well, I don't know if it's gaffes. I mean, that's an interesting word. I mean, I think what you have is a disconnect in the way in which this man thinks and addresses issues. He's a businessman. And the last businessman president, and I have to leave George W. Bush out of the equation, that the United States had was Herbert Hoover. And this was a man who, after 10 months in office, oversaw the Great Depression.
Right.
So you've got some issues here of the language of business versus the language of governing and diplomacy. And what we've seen both in the recently released tape that's made all the news the last 48 hours in the U.S., as well as the gaffes that he has made along the way, are an example of someone used to speaking in very clipped, very strategic, very direct language, which is not the language of diplomacy. It's not the language of governing. You need to be able to, campaign in poetry and govern in prose. He's already in prose and probably in a staccato form of prose that's not helping him to actually make people like him. I was listening to the Morning Joe program podcast this morning, and I think that the gentleman from the Huffington Post, Sam Stein, hit the nail on the head. Romney has come up with all the reasons to hate Obama, and they're sounding rather tired. What he's not done is convinced people why they should like him and vote for him. And I think that's the issue we ran into, frankly, in 2004 with John Kerry versus George W. Bush. We all hated George W. Bush, but we didn't fall in love with John Kerry. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that in reverse here. And I don't see how, the way this candidacy has been going and the way this campaign has been going, he's going to be able to pull out of that particular nosedive that he's in at the moment.
All right, we're going to keep an eye on it. We've been speaking with Dennis Campbell, editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine, Thursday's World View with Dennis Campbell segment. Thanks as always, Dennis.
Thank you, and I'm going to go have that cup of coffee now.
Right, of course, referring to the Fox News prank which took place where the guy was drinking coffee during the interview. Okay, let's move on. I want to say hi to a new David Pakman Show member of the day, of course made possible by liberalbias.com. Liberal Bias can be found in amazing places, even in single-celled organisms like yeast can be guilty of liberal bias, Lewis. Shocking stuff.
Fascinating.
Today's new member of the day, Catherine Cameron. It's great to have Catherine on board. Every David Pakman Show member supports the show, helps the show to continue, helps the show to grow. Lewis, what's subway grinding? Are you familiar with this?
Is that when you're eating like a grinder on the subway?
No, it's actually when people rub up against others in a crowded subway in what is considered a lewd and sexual manner. New York City is now trying to make subway grinding a felony sex crime.
Okay.
A Bronx man was recently convicted of doing it to 3 young women, didn't go to jail because of a ruling by the New York Supreme Court. He was charged with forcible compulsion after he grinded on a 14-year-old, but the New York State Court of Appeals ruled he didn't use force, so it's only a misdemeanor. City Councilman Peter Vallone is saying that he wants to put subway grinders on a sex offender list. The judges are wrong, he says. They're up in an ivory tower. They're not a 14-year-old girl pinned in a train while having this happen to her, but we shouldn't rely on them. Albany needs to write a new law to fit this crime. What's your reaction? You think that makes sense?
I agree 100%.
It should be a felony.
Yes.
Okay, now there's one idea.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, I bet there are situations in which this could happen by accident because the train's moving, someone, loses their footing. It could happen by accident. So it might be, I don't know, the law might be hard to enforce. I don't know.
I got an email from someone saying, in some other countries with crowded trains, like, for example, India and Japan, they've added some woman-only cars which don't allow men on them, and it kind of resolves this issue altogether because, number one, they're less crowded, but number two, it's typically man-on-woman lewd grinding that's taking place, and it really kind of resolves it. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Unless there's like an even number of cars, I mean, those could get completely filled up, and then someone who doesn't want to get on the one with men could, I don't know, not get to work on time or something of that nature. I mean, how do you really...
Well, it brings up the question of whether
segregation
type policy is good to... Is it a good means to an end, right? I mean, what do you think, Natan?
I think we've gotten to the point where men and women can be in the same room without engaging in felonies.
Yeah, right.
But
you would think you don't need to separate them to prevent felonies.
Right. Also, just on a realistic basis, this isn't going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Imagine going to work with your wife on the same subway ride or whatever, and being, "Hey, all right, I'll catch you on, when we get off."
No. That's the thing. There would be It's not that women would be forced to be in a woman-only car. There just would be certain cars that are women-only.
You could choose to go in that one.
Exactly.
Right. I don't think it's going to happen.
You don't like it.
I think it's just a much better idea to write a law to make this a punishable crime.
But the other thing is, how do you really know what happened? I mean, the thing's rocking and rolling. People are getting slammed up against each other. Is it that clear, I wonder? And then also, after the fact, how is it anything other than one person's word against the others? It's so crowded, it's very unlikely you'll really have accurate witnesses.
True. Perhaps it's one of those things where if it happens multiple times, like the first time you've put in a complaint, and if a complaint against the person.
Right, same person gets caught again.
If the same person gets 3 complaints, well, then they get charged with felony.
There you go.
I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
All right, send me your thoughts. And Yonatan?
I just hit 3 grinds and you're out.
3 grinds and you're out, absolutely. Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Join us on Facebook. Let's take a break. We'll be back after this with Democratic gubernatorial candidate in Indiana, John Gregg, and then plenty more. Stay tuned. Back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
We, of course, have been talking about the upcoming presidential election, but we've also been talking about possible changes in control of the House and Senate. We haven't spent that much time on governor's races, and I want to do that now. Joining me is John Gregg, who is the Democratic Party nominee for governor of Indiana, running against Republican Mike Pence. Now, it's great to have you here, John. I want to start with one thing which caught my attention, which is that while you consider yourself pro-life, you do support funding Planned Parenthood. So let's get into that a little bit. What is your position on abortion?
Well, I am a pro-life Democrat, and the years that I was in the legislature, that was my position. It still is my position. But, David, people can apply common sense. They can look at the facts, and the facts are federal dollars that go to Planned Parenthood or state dollars that go to Planned Parenthood only go for family planning, birth control, cervical exams, which are cancer screening, and Pap test. And how can you be against that? I mean, that's women's access to health care. Abortions are not done with federal tax dollars or state tax dollars. So you can be pro-life and still support Planned Parenthood.
The other thing, that's just fact, and we talked about that on this program. It seemed to be missing from much of the national discussion around the war on women and the Planned Parenthood scandal from a few months back. The other thing, though, is I'm curious, as a pro-life Democrat, do you believe what some on the right believe, which is that many on the left who support abortions being safe and legal actually want to have more abortions? Or do you think that's just kind of one of those straw men that doesn't really exist?
The whole time I was speaker, because Indiana, the Democrats in Indiana run a pretty broad spectrum from liberal to conservative. And I can tell you as speaker, same as when I'm governor, we tried to concentrate on issues that brought us together. And most people in Indiana are concerned about jobs. My opponent has made a whole 12-year career out of defunding Planned Parenthood.
But let me stop you there, though, because I like to shoot straight here. And I'm recognizing what you're doing now as the tangential response and pivot to something else. My question was very, very specific. Some are accused of, by supporting the right to have an abortion, wanting to see more abortions. Like, for example, I believe abortions should be safe and legal to access. I would prefer there be none. However, I still agree that they should be available. Do you really think that there's some on the left who want more abortions?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, good. Excellent. That's exactly the answer I was hoping for. Let's talk a little bit about this race with Mike Pence here. You talked about jobs, and we're seeing so much now being thrown about, particularly starting with the presidential race, about who is better for creating jobs, and it's coming down to President Obama and Mitt Romney, but then it filters down to state policy and Republicans versus Democrats. President Clinton presented some interesting numbers in his DNC speech about historically which White House party is better at creating jobs. What specifically for Indiana do you propose that will create jobs?
We propose concentrating our efforts in 5 areas that we have great opportunities. We're an agricultural state. We talk about the opportunities we have in agriculture, from urban, from green, to large greenhouses, to we also talk about the opportunities of research and development. We talk about the opportunities in manufacturing, specifically what we call advanced manufacturing through our steel and our automotive industries. But also we have a lot of high tech and laser optics, robotics production, improving those, taking advantage of our location. Our third area is logistics. Our fourth area is life sciences. A lot of people may not know this, but Indiana is between third and fourth in the number of people employed in life sciences. And the fifth item we have is energy. We are a mining state. We also have methane, natural gas. Because of ag, we have got the potential for biofuels and all kinds of production related to ag all across the state. And we're also a wind producer in the northern part of the state.
Is wind a tough thing to start really developing? I mean, here where we are in Massachusetts, you can drive around in different parts and actually see the wind farms. And of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the not in my own backyard type of mentality that often takes place with that. Is wind, what can really be done with wind in Indiana?
Well, we've got wind farms in the Northwest. And we've got some going up in the Northeast. I'll tell you where it's great. It's how we get people back to work in Indiana. It's not only a reality, but there are aluminum blades. And these aluminum blades ought to be made in Indiana. And that pole that holds it up ain't no Georgia pine. It's a piece of steel. And that steel ought to be made in Indiana. And the wire needs to come out of the old Essex plant in Fort Wayne. And the hub on that needs to be cast at a foundry in LaPorte. But what most people don't know, David, in the case of Indiana, 85% plus of those wind turbines are shipped here from Western Europe. That's ridiculous. We need to be making them here in the United States, and we want to make them in Indiana. So it not only helps with an alternate fuel and helps with our energy independence, it can put Hoosiers to work.
One area where I can only imagine you strongly disagree with your opponent in is that of healthcare, and that really ties into jobs pretty significantly. I'm curious, being in Massachusetts myself, we actually now have this healthcare program that Mitt Romney put into place, which was then strengthened by our current governor, Deval Patrick. Do you have the idea of creating some kind of a safety net, some kind of an expanded Medicaid type program in Indiana if you're a governor? I mean, what are your thoughts along those lines?
Well, we have in Indiana our current governor who cannot seek re-election, who's very popular, who's of the opposite party. He has what he calls a CHIP program, and we can take that program and want to use that as a basis. And in order to comply with, of course, the current federal law, the Affordable Health Care Act, the only thing we would need to apply to just have the essential health benefits, the EHP, would be maternity coverage. So we've got a pretty good thing in Indiana, but we have neglected, when you talk about a safety net, we've got some problems here in Indiana. They tried to privatize what we call our Family and Social Services Agency, which is the old state welfare department. They sent $200 million back from what we call our Department of Children's Services. And we've done some things that we've got to work at getting that safety net when it comes to the care and the oversight of children that in homes that maybe aren't like mine and yours growing up, that, you know, are in danger, that can be abused, that are being harmed, and sometimes even worse. So we've got those challenges, but we're prepared to meet them, and we have a plan to meet them.
Would you support pushing a state-based single-payer type system like what the governor in Vermont is doing?
Well, I think the thought in Indiana is that since we've had the Affordable Health Care Act passed, and since that is the law, that's what we'll be doing in Indiana. My lieutenant governor and I have said since that's the law, we've met with our current governor, who met with all three of the candidates, and he briefed us on it, and we talked a little bit about options. We have to make a decision by mid-November. We won't be in office, but he has sought our input as to whether or not the state of Indiana in the insurance pool, which is what's required in the Affordable Health Care Act, whether we would just have an Indiana pool, whether we'd have a regional pool, whether we'd have a hybrid pool between federal and state or just go in the federal pool. And based on the information we have provided to us by the governor and under our current understanding of the law, we would be looking at going at a hybrid where the federal government would help pay for 80% of the setup and startup of that program, and then we in Indiana though would get to run it, and we could tailor it.
So I'm hearing, no, you wouldn't be interested in going even further and trying to do state-based single payer like Vermont?
No, I don't think we will need to do that, in part because of the Affordable Health Care Act, but there's been no movement to do that in Indiana.
All right, John Gregg, Democratic Party nominee for governor of Indiana, state rep in Indiana from 1986 to 2002, also Speaker of the House there, 1996 to 2002. Really a pleasure speaking with you today, and best of luck in the campaign.
Well, thank you. And I always like to point out I'm a former university president and would like to invite your listeners to check us out at gregforgovernor.com.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a break and stay tuned. Plenty more coming up after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome back to the show. Please become a David Pakman Show member at davidpakman.com/membership. We're mostly supported by individual memberships. We're talking about pennies a day, a whole bunch of great benefits, including the bonus show hosted and produced by Louis Motamedi, and plenty more. davidpakman.com/membership. Ronald Post is a death row inmate in Ohio who weighs at least 480 pounds, and he wants his upcoming execution to be delayed, saying his weight could lead to a torturous and lingering death. The argument being made is when he's had medical procedures, it's been very difficult to actually fit him with the needle and to find a vein, and that when this happens, and there is evidence of it happening with other executions with overweight individuals, that it can become a very painful and drawn-out process, psychologically damaging, so on and so forth. What do you think?
I think weighing 480 pounds is clearly a torturous and lingering death.
So you think just the fact that he's already in this case shouldn't delay a... Now, let's be clear. I'm against the death penalty. I'm against the death penalty even existing for a number of reasons we've talked about on the show many, many times.
Right.
Not really the conversation I'm looking to have
Putting that aside.
Putting that aside, the question is, if you have the death penalty, is it legitimate to delay the death penalty because of someone's being overweight, which might cause the putting to death of them to be different in some way than of a normal weight person?
There was one instance in which someone was going to be hung, and the weight was a factor there.
That's right. In fact, I have that story here. There's an individual here who was, in 1994 in Washington State, Mitchell Roop was convicted, and he weighed more than 400 pounds. And the judge agreed that he was too heavy to hang because of his weight. There was risk of decapitation. So it would be considered cruel and unusual punishment. Hanging someone without decapitating them in order to kill them is probably also pretty cruel and unusual, but apparently that didn't meet the state standard. Yeah, this day and age it's not it's still considered. Okay, so yeah, that's an example also. I don't know what the barometer should be. On the one hand, and again, I want to say again, I'm against the death penalty. If the person is to be put to death, does being overweight prevent them from having that happen? Although realistically, it's more likely they would die because of a heart attack in the longer term. I don't know. Can't the prison limit how much he eats? It says that because of his severe depression, he hasn't been able to limit the amount that he eats. Doesn't the prison very closely control meals that prisoners get?
Yes, but it's also very common for prisons to load people up on very high-fat food.
Yeah.
How about we get him some antidepressants, get him on an organic whole foods diet, stretch it out a couple of years, get him into really tip-top shape, and then kill him.
There we go.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what he wants.
It would be even more expensive for the state. Sounds about right, as we know. Death penalty, very, very expensive.
Putting aside the fact that we don't think there should be a death penalty, in this situation, let's stick the needle in him.
You think so?
Like that.
And you're saying, in other words, being against the death penalty, you just don't see that much of a difference in doing it right now versus with someone who's of normal weight.
if I'm saying if it's going to happen anyway, he's just trying to buy time. Just do it. Just get it over with.
All right, there we go. And again, to be completely clear, we don't agree that the death penalty should even be used.
Right.
Just want to point one thing out.
Yeah.
Someone on the stream is writing to that we should get this guy a firing squad. And I was actually thinking the exact same thing. This would be avoided with a firing squad.
Yes, it would.
But I don't know if that is even legal.
They don't. I think maybe Utah has that still. I don't know.
Probably Texas.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. Okay, a couple quick things. Number one, we are trying to ask Hulu to carry the David Pakman Show. So an audience member has gone on to hulu.com/discussions, which is their forum. You go to content requests, and then under feedback and requests, you select content requests. And then there's actually a subject that says the David Pakman Show. Please go on there and just say, I would also love the David Pakman Show to be on Hulu. We think that would be a great place to carry our show, Lewis. So again, hulu.com/discussions. Under feedback and requests, go to content requests, and then you'll see one, the David Pakman Show. Just add your name to that. Number two, we're going to do another Thursday trivia question. We'll give you until Monday, 2 p.m. to send in your answer. The rules are you have to use the Contact Us page on davidpakman.com. Commenting on the video on YouTube doesn't count. Commenting on the website doesn't count. You have to contact us, fill out the form with your answer. Here's the question. Which Middle Eastern country is the biggest consumer of the David Pakman Show? What Middle Eastern country has, in which Middle Eastern country is the David Pakman Show most popular? This is going to be an interesting one, Lewis. A lot of connections there. I mean, of course, I am Jewish. Some people may say, well, it's got to be Israel. Lewis is Iranian. Maybe it's Iran, although there's, of course, it's difficult to get these types of shows in Iran. We talk about Muslims, so, I don't know. I'm leaving it wide open. Which Middle Eastern country is the biggest consumer of the David Pakman Show? If you're right, we'll put you in a pool for a free membership. If it's no more than 5 people, everybody gets a free membership. If it's more than 5, we will just randomly select some of the people who get the answer right. Here's a voicemail, 219-2-DAVID-P from our voicemail line. Let's listen.
Yeah, hi. My name's Tom. I was watching your show a week ago, I think, and you were talking. It must have been around the anniversary of 9/11. You were talking briefly about 9/11 in a different manner, and your assistant was courageous enough to admit that he has a different opinion than David Pakman regarding the events of what we were told what happened. He made a very interesting comment, which I was just startled by. What he said is, we can't talk about that. He was saying, as you know, I have a different opinion of what we were told, or something to that effect. But then he said, but we can't talk about that.
Okay, so this gentleman goes on to make the case that even on this show, we're censoring alternative views about 9/11. I think Lewis, number one, was being a little bit sarcastic. And eventually, we actually did discuss our so-called conspiracy theory, which is that we just think that George W. Bush, this was mine, and I think you agreed, not knowing that it would be 9/11 as it was, thought it would be 20, 30 people die.
Thought it would be advantageous to use an attack.
Right. Not that specifically was involved in the planning of the planes and anything, just was hearing warnings and just thought, if 20 or 30 people die, it's not going to be that bad for going into Iraq. That's kind of it.
I mean, I did hold back a little bit. Yeah, I just didn't want to open up that can of worms, which could lead into a 20-minute discussion that we just don't have time for. But we try not to censor ourselves too much here.
Yeah, I don't think that there is censorship happening. A couple quick emails. On Rush Limbaugh's theory that al-Qaeda gave up bin Laden to make President Obama look good, Obama should return the favor and hand over Rush Limbaugh to al-Qaeda. There's an idea. That's interesting.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Okay. And on Mitt Romney's clip where he admits to Bain Capital using and profiting from Chinese labor, some say slave labor, some say child labor. Come on, David. The fence is to keep people out, like the Berlin Wall was to keep the West Berliners from invading the workers' paradise in East Berlin. Obviously, these girls kill themselves from a sense of joy. But how can you expect Mitt, a 47%er, to understand? No, Mitt's not the 47%er. Mitt's a 53%er. He does pay his taxes. Oh, wait a second. No, he doesn't. He pays almost no taxes.
You're a 47%er.
And he'd pay even less if he were elected. We'll see you on Monday.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.